But let's bring Jonathan Ashworth into the conversation now. He's the Labour MP for Leicester South, as well as being the shadow Paymaster General. I'm describing him as Labour's resident attack dog, because that's what he seems to be these days. Mr. Ashworth, lovely to see you. This Natalie Elphicke defection's absolutely backfired, hasn't it? What on earth was Keir Starmer thinking? This woman is a rabid right-winger who's attacked Labour, and now we find out that she's tried to cover up, with the help of the former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, her ex-husband's conviction for sexual assault allegations.
Well, first of all, Camilla, I'm a pussycat. As you know, not an attack dog. But more generally, I think the defection reveals the decay and disintegration of the Tory government before our eyes. Yes, she has said that the interpretation of events is not one that she recognises that it is nonsense. But I think her move is as what is happening across the country with people who have been Conservative all their lives, or perhaps shifted their vote from Labour to Conservative in more recent years, are shifting now to the Labour Party led by Keir Starmer, because they've had enough of 14 years of failure. They want to turn the page on 14 years of failure.
Yes.
And they know that another 5 years of the Conservatives, with their £46 billion black hole in their plans, would mean tax rises for pensioners, or cuts to the NHS, or a boring bonanza putting mortgages up again.
And that's one way of spinning it. I mean, the other way of spinning it could be that it shows a extraordinary amount of political cynicism by Keir Starmer, and that Labour must have promised her something for this, because she isn't standing, is she? You've got your own Labour candidate in Dover. So what have you promised her? Will it be Baroness Elphicke of Dover come 2025?
No, we don't make promises. We don't do deals.
I think you do,
like
because you have given deals to people in the past, haven't you? Well, you did give a deal to Davies, wasn't it? Who was the Tory who defected to you? What's the first name? Nigel's with me. It's an MP called Davies back in the day, and lo and behold, about 18 months later, he ended up with a peerage from Labour.
Back in the day.
Ah. So you don't take responsibility for cronyism in days gone by?
No, I don't take responsibility for things I had nothing to do with, umpteen years ago. No, I don't. That is.
So you're guaranteeing.
Generally, I don't do that in life. No.
You're guaranteeing that Natalie Elphicke will not end up with a peerage under a Labour government, are you?
There is no deal has been done. No promises
I've not asked
have
you
been
that.
made. Natalie Elphicke was disillusioned with the failure to help young people get onto the housing ladder, disillusioned with the Tory failure to bring order to the borders and stop the boats. She looked at Keir Starmer's Labour Party. She sees that's the change this country needs, and she moved over, as thousands and thousands of Conservatives across the country are doing. I just want to say this. I am not a very tribal kind of guy. Let me say this. I've got friends. I've got relations. I've got neighbours who are Conservatives. They're not my enemy, they're my friends and relations, and I want those people, as many of them are, to shift their vote to Labour at the next general election.
Yeah. Just to say that the MP who was rewarded for his defection to Labour was Quentin Davies. I knew it was Davies in 2007. But can you just give me a guarantee? Because you didn't quite answer that question, Mr. Ashworth. I asked you, can you give me a guarantee, if you haven't done any deals, you should be able to do this, that Natalie Elphicke will not be given a peerage under a future Labour government? Give me that guarantee this morning.
I can give you a guarantee that no deals have been done. Now,
that's not the same, and you know it.
I'm not responsible for Lords' appointments. I don't have that power. If I did, I'd be putting you in the Lords, Camilla. But I don't have that power, sadly. But I can guarantee you that no deal has been done, no promises have been made.
You know you're answering a different question to the one I'm asking you. I mean, put me in the Lords. I think the country suffered enough, Mr. Ashworth. You're not going to answer that, so let's move on. Do you really think that the public should be convinced by Keir Starmer's boast to stop the boats and bring immigration down when he's literally spent his entire political career advocating open borders? In fact, back in the day, he once commented that there is a racist undercurrent that permeates all immigration law. Well, we calculate, I think there's a report which calculated that he has repeatedly voted against more border control, repeatedly voted against the Rwanda plan. Here we are, the Henry Jackson Society. Between 2015 and 2022, Starmer voted 14 times against stricter asylum system and abstained 22 times, never voting in favour of stricter measures.
No, he voted against hopeless measures that wouldn't work. And have they worked? I mean, what's the latest figures? 8,000 or 9,000 have crossed? Hundreds every day? Have all these things we voted against worked? No. And we said they wouldn't work. That's why we voted against them. We said this incompetent government wouldn't be able to get a grip of it. It's why we've talked about a border security command, bringing together the police, the intelligence service. It's like why we've said use terrorist-style laws to go after the smugglers, like, control orders, stop and search warrants of premises. These things aren't being used at the moment. We've got to get tough with these smuggling gangs. That's exactly how we would approach this. And by the way, that massive backlog with people in hotels, around 36,000 people in hotels, that's like a big neon flashing light to these smugglers saying, come to the UK, because all that will happen is that you'll be in a hotel paid for by the taxpayer and the government will do nothing about it. No, we're going to call time on that racket. We're going to get people to process the applications, and if people don't have the right to be here, they will be sent back to their countries of origin if they don't have the right to be here.
Are you going to turn boats around back to France?
No, we have said we are going to put in place a proper border security command, and we're going to deal with this problem at root by going after these exploitative criminal gangsters who are putting people on these boats. We're going to cooperate cross-border, yes, but we're going to use terrorist-style laws to go after them.
How quickly are you going to clear this backlog? Could you give us a time frame?
I'm not going to give you a false time frame, because how many times you had a Tory minister on your show giving you a time frame and it turns out to be absolute nonsense. So we've got to look at it's not quite the books, but you need the point that I'm making is, look, we don't know when a general election is. It could be this summer, it could be November. We've got to look at the situation properly. We've got to look at the people who are in the backlog and then come to a realistic assessment, and we'll be honest with you at that point. But we're not going to make you false promises. GB News viewers are sick to the back teeth of politicians making false promises they know they can't deliver.
If the Rwanda plan isn't working, why do you think that migrants are trying to get into Ireland via Northern Ireland?
Well, it isn't working, is it? Because there's still hundreds and hundreds of people crossing in boats every day. And the Rwanda plan was only ever going to be about 1%. 1%. Yeah. What about the other 99%?
But I mean, it's about 1% of processing.
That's a huge amount of money.
But let me ask you this, Mr. Ashworth. If it does actually end up proving to be a deterrent, just if it does, you're still going to scrap it?
But it's not going to be a deterrent, because it isn't a deterrent.
But it's acting as a deterrent already, isn't it? Because of the island situation.
How many people crossed last week? How many people crossed last week?
I appreciate that, but if Ireland is a little test case of this...
It's a curious deterrent. It's a curious deterrent if people are still crossing in boats every day. That's a curious deterrent. Oh, pull the...
But if I'm just saying, hypothetically, if flights start taking off and it does seem to be acting as more of a deterrent, and say between now and the time a Labour government comes in, if those boat crossings do go down and it looks as if it's working, because we had a similar system in Australia and at the time Labour opposed it, and now, lo and behold, the Labour government has embraced it because it's working. What I'm saying is, if it does work, you're still going to scrap it.
It's not going to work. I mean, they tried this in Israel. They tried to do a deal with Rwanda. It didn't work there. Actually increased people trafficking. Look, there's thousands of people crossing in these boats. And the fact that people know that once they get here and they get in the asylum system, they get put up in a hotel, right, and they never get processed, that is a massive, massive incentive. So that is the thing that we need to fix.
Well, where will you put these people up?
And we're going
You're not going to put them up in hotels. Where are you going to put them up?
We're going to process them and we're going to send them back if they don't have the right to be here.
How quickly?
We're going to put 1,000... We're going to put 1,000 people... We think we can do that in the first 12 months. We're going to put 1,000 new staff into a returns and enforcement unit to do just that. and we're going to put 1,200 people into a processing unit to process the backlog in asylum applications. I mean, it's something like 36,000 people in these hotels, costing about £8 million a day. £8 million of taxpayers' money a day. And the Tories just go, oh, we can't do anything about it. I mean, give me strength.
Can we talk about how...
No wonder they failed to bring order to the borders.
Can you tell me about how you're going to accommodate what is predicted to be 40,000 private school pupils whose parents won't be able to afford the fees if Labour puts VAT on them, who are then going to have to go into the public sector? How are you going to accommodate those children? 40,000 children might be driven out of private schools by your policy. You're always arguing that schools are already overcrowded. So what will you do, build temporary classrooms or...?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that scaremongering. I mean, the Times splashed on it yesterday, and it turns out it's what, something like 0.1% or something.
2.7%.
So I don't believe that's scaremongering. I mean, the reality is, because of the public finances are shot to pieces because of decisions taken by the Conservatives, we've got to make some tough decisions. We've got to make some tough decisions to change taxation in order to use that money to fund mental health support in every state sector school, to expand our teaching workforce in state sector schools. These are tough decisions. I know private schools don't like it. I know they've spoken out. But in the same way that the state sector has had to make tough accommodations, in some ways the private sector could look to some of the tough accommodations that the state sector have made. But we do have to... Look, government is difficult. It's about choices. You've got to make tough choices. But I think in the end, if you can improve mental health support in schools across the board for the 90-odd%, the vast majority of children, when we know that so many are suffering from mental health problems, I think that is an important and welcome step.
And what about the mental health of private school pupils who may be plucked from their school environment and taken away from their friends? What about their mental health?
Well, look, I don't believe there will be that flow of numbers from the private sector to the state sector.
I would imagine the Independent School Council knows better than you, and they say that 40,000 might leave. So what about their mental health, genuinely?
Well, look, I don't accept those figures. I disagree with the Independent School Council on that front. But look, in the end, look, if the Tories have made a mess of the public finances, as they have, you have got to take some tough decisions somewhere. And we believe this is one of those tough decisions where we can raise money to expand mental health support and teaching support in the state sector for the vast majority of children.
All right, Jonathan Ashworth, as ever, lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.